Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Movie Files. Today, Morgan and I are here to review episode 2 of American Horror Story entitled Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. So, this episode picks up immediately after the first episode, which has our main character, Allie, waking up next to a freaky clown, which she has seen several times this season so far. So, we open the scene up with Allie running out of the bedroom looking for Ivy, screaming bloody murder. And of course, Ivy tries to believe her wife, tries to go upstairs with a knife in attack mode, but of course, as we've seen so far, the common theme is Allie screams wolf. There's nothing to prove for Ivy to believe her. So as that's going on, we have our character Oz kind of at the same time having a night terror, as he calls it, and is attacked by Twisty the Clown, as well as another clown that we saw from last week, trying to attack him, which, question for you is the significance of Oz having these night terrors and then Allie having these kind of night terrors as well, or slash hallucinations. What do you think the significance of that is?
Yeah. Well, I think this episode we have finally found that these clowns are not a figment of their imagination.
Yeah.
Twisty could be up in the air. Maybe that still is a figment of their imagination. And who knows, maybe they're going to tie things together from the season he was on. I think that was season 4.
Yeah, the timeline would necessarily match up, especially if you guys seen
it was
Show.
It was in a different time frame. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And they also highlighted that Twisted Clown, they had an action figure in the episode that showed that he was a fictional character, and then also in episode 1 we saw Oz reading a magazine or a comic book. So we can assume that he's a fictional character, but with American Horror Story, it can go any type of way.
It could go any type of way, yeah. But anyway, I think we've come to the conclusion after this episode that for the most part, some of these clowns are real.
Yeah.
They're not fake. They're not a figment of anyone's imagination.
Yeah.
Like, shit's happening.
It's
going
down. Too, to your point, showing that they are real, they showed us in last week's episode with the murder of the neighbors that they are real. Because why would they wouldn't show us those clowns in that scenario killing them if they were fake characters. So those clowns minus Twisty, we can assume that they are
real. Yeah,
planted in reality.
Yeah, and it seems like they're preying specifically on Allie and Oz. Yeah. First, Allie. I think it's debatable whether or not they were actually real when they were in the grocery store, unless someone's trying to cover things up.
Sure.
But anyway, there's, specifically preying on Allie and Oz. No one else is seeing them except those two.
Right.
And it seems like Allie, she gets the short end of the stick because she's just this very vulnerable character from the moment we meet her.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn that she has dealt with hallucinations, bad anxiety, issues like that, fear of clowns. She even goes on to mention.
Yeah.
And then Oz, he is a child. So no one believes him. It's like, oh, it's all his imagination. So it just seems, very convenient for them to be specifically preying on them. Now, why exactly or what their angle is going forward, I don't know.
All right, so that leads into my next point. While that's going on, the opening sequence, we have our main character Kai. We see the aftermath of his little stunt that he pulled last week, where he urinated in a condom and threw it at a Latino group, and obviously that upset them. So in return, they gave him, a pretty good ass whooping. So while that was going on, they were recording that. You assume that was Winter recording that beat down, but we don't know quite yet. But I would safe to say it was Winter. So they record that, and we see the aftermath of that is that Kai is now the victim of the town. And in doing so, using that victim title, he's running for office.
He's using
it
as leverage.
Yeah, which was very convenient from last week's episode. Again, this is our breakdown, recap, and spoilers. So from last week, as you guys saw, they murdered the neighbors. And in doing so, it left a seat wide open for Kai to just push his way into the office. So where do you think they're going with this as far as Kai? Is he going to be a big player in the city or even nationally? What do you think they're going to take this guy?
I think they're doing exactly what happened in real life with Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton. And I think when they were running for president, a lot of people were like, there is no way that Donald Trump is going to win. I mean, I remember hearing that for years, even back in 2015, where people are like, there's no way, this is a joke, not going to happen. And then sure enough, he becomes president, and we're all like, WTF, you know?
Yeah, very similar
or
to
maybe
the
not everyone, but I certainly was. But anyway, I think they're really playing off that, and you know, they're almost using it maybe as a metaphor of some sort, of someone who you think maybe doesn't have power. Of course, you know, in real life, Donald Trump had money, so money makes the world go round, right? So yeah, he has power. Kai, it doesn't seem like he has a ton of money. I'm curious to know, like, what the deal is with their house, because it seems rather large. Where are their parents? I'm sure we'll find out about that.
Kai-centric episode,
but anyway, you know, it really, I think that they're using it as, wow, you know, this person, he doesn't have power. He's not going to be able to take this city by storm, or he would never have a significant role in the community. And you know, I think it's going to be, again, one of those WTF moments, like, how did this happen? How is he rising into that? But he's using his power, you know, he's using his power to do bad things to benefit him. And I think that really you know, correlates with Donald Trump, or the way some people who are not Donald Trump supporters like myself view him. Like, you know, he uses his power to benefit him, even if it may hurt other people. So yeah, and he's definitely creating a divide in the community. So you know, with Donald Trump, you know, when he was running for president, he promised a wall, and even after he became president, you know, still thoughts, conversations of that kind of trickled about. And in this episode, in the last episode, that's brought up a lot more. So in this episode, they talk about a wall a lot, and then you just see that natural divide in the community with that stunt that he pulled, especially, and then something that I'm sure Elliot will happen to later that happened this episode. But they're specifically showing us a divide between white people and Latinos. So so yeah, you know, it's.
So I think it's safe to say Kai is going to have a pretty big presence in the rest of the season, as well as in the town. So that leads into, you know, while Kai has his little plan falling into fruition, and we have Allie and her fears really taking advantage of her, we step into, we meet two new characters, which we have the new neighbors. We have Meadow and Harrison moving in, the husband and wife that we meet. And they have a pretty weird dynamic. So, you know, tell us what you guys think. You know, can we trust these neighbors? Are they part of Kai's crew?
Yes, they are.
I mean, it sounds like, you know, I would love to hear your opinion on this. As we were watching it, we were saying, you know, their storyline per se, you know, what they were telling Allie and Ivy is about their background. It seemed very scripted, very formulated. It seemed like they were
even rehearsing. Though, yes, we know it's a TV show, right? But it was unnatural the way they were talking. It was like, very scripted. Hey,
this is my life, and, you know, kind of giving them all the information up front, and, you know, so I just
and you can never trust anybody. To me, at least, I don't trust people who tell me their whole life story the first time I meet them.
Right.
That's just like, okay. So yeah, I mean, and, you know, another thing that's a little frustrating about it is, of course, once they wrap up with the conversation and go home, Ivy's like, oh, they're not being strange. Like not believing Allie, even though she's seeing it for herself, which for me, it's like, I'm riding with this one until the wheels fall off. Like, if he tells me something is going down, I'm going to believe him. And I hope, you know, for the same, just because I've watched too many movies, right? And then also, I think another frustrating part for me with this is Allie and Ivy, they actually walk into their home and they're, you know, yelling for Oz because they can't seem to find him. And then Winter pops up, like, very nonchalant, and they're like, where's our kid? And she's like, oh, they're at the neighbors. You just left him at the neighbors?
And not just the neighbors.
They're really cool people. Neighbors.
But the house.
Their friends just were murdered in.
It's a murder house.
So, you know, it's a little frustrating because then later on in the episode, they decide to hire her as a full-time nanny, and it's like all of these red flags are just popping up. Why are you believing them? And then just one last thing that I wanted to point out about these new neighbors is they made a comment to Allie and Ivy about because Allie's obviously very, very uncomfortable. Why did you just move into this home? These people were just murdered. And they're still all just like, there's blood stains. There's still the smiley face or scared face on it. The cops
would still have it as a crime scene.
Which,
I guess
it's a show. But anyway, which I think digs into a bigger picture is, is the government or police enforcement also involved in this? Sure. If this is just maybe like whatever, doing what they want. Yeah. But anyway, Harrison makes a comment to Allie and Ivy, and he said that he called the owners of the home and asked if he could buy the house, and they just signed the deed to him. And Allie and Ivy are like, what? Like, they didn't even know that their friends didn't own this home. Right. They thought they owned it, but really apparently these people were renting it. So I think that tells another story that hopefully they'll explain. Yeah. I think that they're gonna, if they don't touch on that again, I'd be very surprised.
I mean, this episode planted a lot of seeds for things to come, just how big this, this plan or whatever. And that's something we could touch on a little bit later. But, it seems like Allie is the person they're targeted. And this family in particular is like, how big is this plan? How far does it go?
And for what? Why her? Yeah, I mean, we'll find out of that town, I'm sure there's many other people who... Sure. Are vulnerable and have children. This is just kind of like a prediction thing, but I was talking to my niece who is 21, so it's not like a baby child watching this, but she had given me a prediction that Kai is actually the sperm donor for Oz, and I thought, wow, that could be interesting. Sure. Again, how does he have these resources to find out? But maybe that's why they're being targeted. I don't know. Yeah. But there's got to be some specific reason. And if American Horror Story, if the writers do not tell us the specific reason, I'm going to be a little irritated. I'm going to feel a little slighted because there has to be some reason they're targeting this family. Well, I mean, that leads into going back to just this family, but Oz being a kid and having those sensibilities of kids just falling into anyone that shows them enough attention or is kind of them. I mean, we have Oz and Winter building more of a rapport relationship more. They had their little bond, which we saw Winter and Kai having last week with the fingers fleshing by flesh, their whole spiel there. So obviously we have Winter manipulating Oz. The whole idea of building a house or crumbling a house, an empire down by the inside. She's reaching for Oz. And he's just not telling anyone. He's just letting her watch. I mean, they made a promise, so now he's officially linked to Winter, as she puts it. So this relationship with Winter and Oz seems to be growing a little bit more. What do you think this is going to head? Do you think Oz is just fully now on Winter's side, or do you think he has? I don't think necessarily he's on her side. Yeah. I think he senses, and you kind of get it a little bit in this episode because he's kind of ignoring her, and she calls him out on it. But I think he senses like, okay, something's wrong with this woman. But again, it's all about power. It's about her being an adult and him being a child, and unfortunately things like this really happen every day. And I think that's what I like about the show is it does touch on things, just everyday things, and then also just things that are very relevant to life in general. So I think he almost feels like, I mean, she told him that these clowns were not out to get him, and that if they did this little pinky promise, then she would take on his fear. So at this point, I think he kind of sees her as someone who is helping him, but also he's realizing she's a little creepy, she's a little off, something's not right here, and that's where you see him ignoring her. But as a child, when you already have your parents, when he said that he saw clowns, you already have Ivy's character believing Winter when Winter's like, no, he's lying. So again, I think it all goes back to power. So, he's just thinking, well, shit, I guess it doesn't matter what I say because no one's going to believe me. So Winter is kind of an ally to him right now, but I think he does understand, something's not right. Like, yeah, something's off. Hopefully Oz will say something to his parents and kind of unravel Winter's whole plan of manipulating the family. So that leads into kind of further in the episode. We're now halfway through the episode now, where we kind of go back to Allie's and Ivy's business, the butcher restaurant, and we see they're going to take the night off, and we were introduced to Roger, who's the acting manager of the night, gets into a little scuffle with another character that we're introduced to named Pedro. And in this scuffle, we obviously see, again, we're building this tension, this separation. It's an intense we have a Caucasian guy making a comment about a Latino guy, and they're going back and forth, but ultimately, I mean,
tempers
making
flare up.
racial comments.
Racial things are
Roger says racial things to Pedro that are inappropriate.
Yeah, we have some
a
knife thrown in there, and obviously, and then Pedro, made the comment, and he threatened him with the knife. So Allie witnesses that, and kind of, we don't really make much of it. We obviously see they have tension, but as we see further in the episode, that leads to what we believe. I mean, I don't think Pedro has anything to do with it, but Roger is now killed. So that kind of goes into, obviously how big is this plan for Ivy or Allie and her family? Because we would assume that we didn't see Kai or any of his clowns. We don't know who's all in the posse, but obviously some word got out that Roger said some things, and obviously that they're influencing her business, because someone would have seen that, and obviously that caused our character Roger to die pretty soon within the episode.
Right, and it's all planted so eloquently as well, because you have this family being targeted, and then the restaurant that these two women own. We've got some scuffle between two workers, and then within that same night, one of those people is murdered in the restaurant, not at their home. Right. It's not like Roger was killed in his home or whatever. He was hung to that, in that restaurant in the butcher's block area. So clearly there's some kind of connection. And I think I'm sure Elliot will jump into it once we get to the end of the episode, but things just almost happen a little too perfectly or too conveniently in this episode. So
I mean, that leads into one of our next scenes here, where we have Allie is obviously shooken up by this finding of Roger being
she literally
murdered.
Walks into his body, backs into his body.
So obviously that shook her very much,
and she feels responsible. We're introduced to that too. She was trying to help him. I guess he was not dead right when she found him, on the verge of it, obviously. But as she was trying to help him, she kind of made things worse and killed him. So she takes responsibility for this, which obviously someone who is suffering from depression, anxiety, it just makes it worse, really.
Right. So I mean, as we see, Allie is suffering from that. Ivy notices that, so we're introduced to, well, not introduced, but we
see Dr. Rudy Vincent again.
He's brought back into the equation, and Allie and him have an interesting conversation, and it's revealed that Allie is now taking things to another level, which is ultimate security with bars on the door, but also a gun, which was, I guess,
she gets from the neighbors.
Kind of a negative for me in the episode. She goes to the neighbors. She obviously hates them, or not hates them, but is very suspicious of them. But later on, she goes to them to their for help.
Mind you, these people have a shit ton of guns,
which is red flag. You would again, we'll see where this season takes us in backstories, but so. Going back to that conversation that Dr. Rudy and Allie have, we find out that Allie is now, she's shaken to the core. She's taking all things to account and taking it to the extreme. So, do you think she's lost at this point? I mean, the show obviously is kind of getting Allie's direction into, her fears are getting the best of her. She's kind of really slipping from reality to hallucinations, is taking things to the next level. So,
I think she's trying to take some kind of control of what she can take control of, because she basically tells him, you better shut your damn mouth and don't say anything to Ivy, because she's already feeling like Ivy doesn't trust her. Ivy's looking at her like she's crazy. Of course, she's, trying to get some kind of control. Is she maybe taking it a little overboard? That's subjective, obviously. But I think she's just trying to take control so she isn't seen like this maniac. And obviously with him being her therapist, she wouldn't want to get into a situation where she gets put into a home of some sorts, you know what I mean, and locked away. And then she has no control. So,
Awesome. So, we have that conversation going on, and again, Dr. Ruby can't tell Ivy what was told to him, which, Allie has a gun now, which can be unsafe for someone that's unsettled and a little bit on hinges. So now we're kind of wrapping up the episode here. We're going to the final act. We have a neighborhood blackout, which again...
And apparently it's not just a neighborhood blackout.
Yeah, it's going...
It's happening over
across
8 cities,
across
apparently.
the U.S. So it's, again, how big is this? What is, episode 1, planting the seeds, we kind of got an idea where we were going headed to season, but now it's just like, how big is this one isolated incident? It's going across the nation. But
well, and I will say though, kind of what happens before the blackout is Winter basically tries to seduce Allie.
Let me back that up a little bit. Yeah, we have Winter influencing Oz's character, but now we have her influencing
drawing a bath
Allie's character
for her,
and trying to seduce her.
Yeah, doing things that are very inappropriate, especially for someone who's married.
Yeah. Kids at home.
And then right as she is like almost at the cusp of really taking advantage of Allie, the lights go out.
Which again, I guess you can look at it two ways. Was that part of Kai's plan, or was she? Again, how big is this? Who's all the main players? We know Kai has a little something going on, obviously, but again, I mean, if you look at that scene, was Winter, I mean, obviously if she would have seduced Allie, she would have really had a connection with her, but obviously she wasn't able to because the lights cut off so conveniently.
Right,
so.
but I will say, us having knowledge of this blackout is taking place over 8 cities, well, kind of what happens is Allie and Winter, they run downstairs, and then Harrison is at the front door, and he's the one who tells us that this blackout has taken over 8 cities. So we don't really know for sure. Maybe we'll find out next episode, but he is the one who I believe gives them another gun or whatever, and he says candles. That's what it is, because he says the candles will last for multiple days. Yes, and he says that it's terrorism is what he says, which again,
fear,
and it's that natural, divide that they're trying to give us. But that's who tells us. So do we really know if this is real, or is he in cahoots with Kai? I think he is. I think that was planted. So we don't really know, what's going on. And then he kind of runs out, but it just was like all too perfect. Like they run down the stairs and then he's there at that very moment. It's just like so timed too well, which it's TV, right? Sure. But still, it's like it's just timed too perfectly. And then shortly after, Winter's like, I'm out this jam. Like, I'm not hanging out with you. Which again, obviously is for a purpose, because shortly after Winter leaves, even though, Allie's begging her, stay, then a clown pops up. Yeah. We see another clown. So to me, that seems very planted. And, another thing I just want to bring up is you see Harrison in that episode, in that scene, you see Winter in that scene. Why does Harrison leave his wife alone when there's an act of terrorism happening?
Who knows?
I think his wife was that clown.
I mean, we saw in the the lights were cut off from the interior because she had a battery backup with the new security system that she installed earlier in the episode, but it was all cut. So obviously someone was in the home and could have done that. So
now I will say though, it definitely had to be within that city. I don't know how far that the restaurant is, but the restaurant, the power was out there as well.
Right. It wasn't just an isolated incident in their house.
But the backup generator, that was definitely, I mean, I think that was all planned. I think that the blackout was definitely planned. But yeah, you see her with a clown once again. The whole time, I mean, Elliot and I should have done a reaction video because we're just like, what is wrong with you? Why are you not getting your kid? Yeah. And that was even in the beginning when she wakes up next to the clown. She runs. They don't even check on the kid. Yeah. It's like, oh my God. It's so annoying.
Some questionable things. And this, this episode wasn't perfect. But I mean, wrapping up the episode, while that's going on, the blackout, we have orders are given by Ivory to Pedro that we meet early in the episode to go give supplies to
a charger because her phone's dying.
Some chargers, some candles, some waters, a nice little safety kit for them. But in doing so, obviously, this is happening where Allie's just at an all-time high on just panic mode. She has the gun in her hand.
She goes to grab her gun before she gets her son.
She eventually gets Oz. But in doing so, and this is just perfectly, again, maybe we'll do a reaction one of these days, but it was just perfectly lined up. We knew that gun was going to come into play eventually, which it did, which led to Pedro being murdered,
I'm like, she's going to kill somebody.
Murdered, but killed. we'll find out next week, because as they showed
he goes to her back door. Who does that? Yeah, go to the front door. You don't go to the back door.
Well, he did. And Pedro, he gets shot. And then, it ends there. So we can look at it two ways. Obviously, he's dead now, or he's just wounded. Because if you look at next week's episode, it looked like Allie and Ivy on the same page again. So maybe you would think that if Allie murdered a man, that she would be crumbled. But it seemed like there was some scenes where
it was weird.
So I think he might just be injured.
Now, what I find interesting, though, is Roger technically wasn't dead when she found him, and she killed him, right? So she killed Roger, although the police aren't blaming her because it wasn't her fault. It really wasn't her fault. But in the end, she did kill him. And now, if Pedro's dead, she killed him too. So what are the odds that she would have killed both of these men?
Well, at this point, I
by
think
accident,
the detective needs to be Allie and that might where they might be headed, where Allie might be looked at as a suspect for 2 murders in this town, and who's to say that they might not blame Allie for the murders of last week's.
Yeah, but I don't know. I almost feel like law enforcement is in cahoots with all of this too.
Well, if they are, they can definitely blame her for. She's involved.
And maybe
in
that's
murders.
What they're really trying to do, because
again,
with this couple that died in the first episode, they said it was a murder-suicide, which we know it was not.
Right.
So it just seems like they're kind of lining things up. Now with Pedro, though, as I said earlier, it was almost too perfect, because that is something that even if they are planning stuff, they wouldn't have been able to plan his death without his consent of some way, because how would he go to the back door? You know what I mean? So that wouldn't really make too much sense. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe they are using her as someone to plant this on, cover up.
Well, I mean, there it is, guys. There's our breakdown, recap, spoilers, everything that we had to offer. But the main thing is we want to know your thoughts. What did you think of last night's episode of American Horror Story?
And I have to say, who else is in love with like the interior design of this home other than me? Because I'm obsessed with it. It's like just so perfect. I want to live in this house.
It's a beautiful house.
It is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's going in the right direction, even though we saw some corny stuff this episode. But
sure, I mean,
I think it's going to be good.
It was a pretty solid episode. I'm excited to see where things are headed. So far, they got me hooked. They got Morgan hooked. Hopefully, they got you guys hooked as well. So again, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Movie Files, our review here for episode 2. We will be back next week. Again, leave comments. Let us know what you guys think, theories, where you think things are headed for our main characters. And as always, like this video, share the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back earlier this week with later this week, I should say, with a review for Mother. So look out for that. But again, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.